All right, folks. Well, welcome back to Theory Thursday, and as you can see there, I've got light again. So today I'm going to talk about why guitar players can't read. So this is going to basically segue into what I decided to do in life to change that about myself. Because I knew how to read. I was not good at reading until I was in college. So in high school, I kind of faked my way through some musicals. And so essentially, I wanted to show you what that's like. I wanted to show you one of the best ways that I learned how to read, and that was to join musicals and join the big band. I joined a big jazz orchestra in junior college, and I had to read because in order to be in the big band, I had to know how to read. So here are some of the flaws with reading and the reasons that guitar players are not. So that all you non-guitar players out there have an answer to that age-old question: why are guitar players so bad at reading? It's not because we're lazy, I promise. Here we go. To kick it off, let's eliminate the idea that guitar players are lazy or dumb. They just have more options, and more options make things more confusing. So if you look at the top of this page here, you'll see that there's a D minor chord going to a C chord, and it's spelled out at the beginning of the page how they want to hear the notes arranged. And on piano, this would be very simple because there's only one way to play that on piano. Same thing with organ because it's a piano. Same thing with vibes because it's a piano, layout wise. Percussion instrument, just like a piano. Different on a stringed instrument, and this is the reason why. I could play it this way, but I could get the exact same notes by playing it this way, and I could get the exact same notes by playing it this way. They all have slightly different tones, and some of them are much harder to get to than others, but the point is they're all an option. And that makes things confusing because you're not sure what's the best option in the moment because you have several to pick from. Sometimes you have even more to pick from. Certain things you could play in 6 different ways on guitar. But just like a language, the more fluent you are in it, the faster you can make that decision. And so that's really what this is all about. Learning to read is just a matter of becoming fluent enough that you can answer quickly enough. And from any position on guitar, you'll never be as fast as a horn player. And that's just a truth that you're going to have to accept. You're going to make mistakes, but so do horn players sometimes. Everybody does. So the easiest ways to start learning to read is to just accept that sometimes you're going to read wrong and just be okay with it. Now, before we end today, I do want to show you kind of what you're going to look at when you do look at a score for the first time, or you join an orchestra or a band that reads, not just a band, like a band to jam with, but like a band that reads music. It's going to look a lot like this. A lot of the time in a prelude, which is the beginning of the show, you'll have footballs, as we call them, which are just whole notes tied to each other for several bars. And it's fairly common. It's not just this musical. It's fairly common to see in a lot of musicals because it's a big opening. Lots of sustain because they want to draw in the crowd. And then you're going to have lots of this. Chords with rhythms. Lots of it. Most of the time in most guitar books, I would venture to say 80% is going to be slashes with chords. And that's what this is. It's written rhythms with chords. And it's not terribly difficult. You just have to read the rhythms and understand them. And practicing rhythms is, again, just like a language, just like the word the, you see the rhythm written out and you know what it sounds like because you've heard it so many times and it sounds the same as it sounded all of those times. You'll continue by seeing more of the same thing and more of the same thing and more of the same thing, but then you'll see notes and you might get scared because you're like, oh no, I have to read, but then you notice they're small notes and they don't really fit on the staff. They're smaller than normal, and next to them a abbreviation is written, PNO. and it stands for piano, because that's what he's playing, or she, the pianist, is playing at that moment. And this is just so that you know what's going on. So it's actually pretty easy. And then moving along, you'll see that it says plus vocal in those 3 bars of rest. And that's because vocals will come in right there. And then you'll see Glock and the 3 notes that the Glock player plays. And then you see plus bass, because bass just comes in at the end of that. And that's just so you can follow along, so you know what is happening. And then you'll switch to electric guitar and things will look a little bit more hairy. Again, you have more of that other instruments and other vocals coming in, so you know where you are. And if you look carefully next to where it says electric up the very top, distortion delay, you'll see a note, and next to it it says use volume pedal. So what it wants is that wailing kind of high swell that you've heard before. And then moving on, it says turn your delay off, and you'll see notes that you actually have to read or play, and they're usually just following the shape of chords. I'd say about 90% of the time when you see these kind of arpeggiated notes, you can lay them in some kind of a chord shape. 85, 90% of the time, most of the time. The only times that you won't be able to lay them in a chord shape is if they're right next to each other in a line. But when they skip around like this, doing intervals of thirds and fourths, that's because they are a chord, usually. Last but not least, for this lesson, you'll see things come along like at the top of this page, it says Adlibs a la Wes. And it's a jazz waltz. So they're talking about Wes Montgomery. And his ad-libs are usually in octaves, so it's funny that the ones that they suggest to you are not in octaves. But it's okay. What they've done is they've given you a suggestion. If you don't know who Wes Montgomery is, or you don't know how to ad-lib or improv, then they've given you notes that you can play that'll kind of sound like notes that he might play. But if you do know who it is, it's free reign right there. You just look at the key signature, you see the 2 flats, you assume it's either in G minor or B flat, and then you go to town, have fun. Moving along, it's a lot of the same kind of stuff, ad-libs. I don't, in these moments, copy what they do. I just have fun. I change it every night. It's a different thing because it's fun. It's improv. And earlier I did mention notes that are separated in intervals of thirds and fourths are generally chords. Notes like this where it says straight eighths and then has all these eighth notes moving down in a chromatic line. These are not chords. And you can tell because they're right next to each other, and this is actually chromatic. It's literally going from a B to a B flat to an A flat to a G flat to an F. So this run, you can basically just look at, see that it's chromatic, see where it starts, see where it ends, and just chromatic go down, right? You don't have to actually sit there and read every single note. And that's something that you kind of learn over time. If someone gives you a funny look like you did it wrong, then maybe look back and see if one of the notes was supposed to be something else. But I'd say most of the time I just see something like that and I go for what the gut tells me, because we're sight reading, right? And that's the whole purpose. Sight reading will make you a better reader. So that's kind of it for your Theory Thursday. Pick up a book and sight read. The best ways to do it are to play along with someone. So pick up a book and then sight read with a recording. See if you can join a musical. Musicals are always looking for instrumentation. And if you're decent at playing chords, you can kind of, some of the low budget musicals, and especially if you're doing it for free in the beginning, you can get around without really being strong at reading. And then you want to build that up and get better and better and better. But the only way to get better is to do it, and to do it in time, and to practice it along with other musicians. That's really the best way to get fast at it. So yeah, sight reading. It's good for you. Go do it. And that's your Theory Thursday. I'll see you next week. No, I'll see you tomorrow, hopefully. Yeah. Oh yeah, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. See you soon.